today it would have been his 78th birthday because he was born, as he called himself, as him told me, the Midnight's Child. He was born in 1947, today, 20th December. So
Oh,
that's why we thought that we should do it today. And with all the
Yeah,
pollution,
yeah, it
everything
started.
else, we didn't
Started,
want to
started.
actually do it physically in campus. And I was hoping to surprise
And
him because I was
started.
in Chennai and I was going to be there for 4 or 5 days, but one of our workshops there got postponed,
Incident.
and I had to rush back to Delhi just by being 24 hours in Chennai, and so we couldn't really have the joy of giving a surprise to him and said, "Here we are going to do
Hmm.
this together physically." But whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. So here we are. So, Mahesh was somebody who was very special to me when I'd done my summer internship in Tata Motors Telco those days. I was selected for the summer internship program and I landed up for doing my summer internship. And the person who was supposed to guide me was one Mr. Mukhopadhyay, and he had proceeded on leave. And I was not sure what to do. I was just hanging around, and Mr. Mukhopadhyay's department was just next to Mahesh's department. So Mahesh saw me and he said, I said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Here I am joining for my summer internship." He said, "Come on in." And he quickly found out that, the Mukhopadhyay was on long leave. So he said, "Okay, you sit with me. I'm going to guide you." So he became my summer guide for my summer internship, and that turned out to be quite an event because I think I really enjoyed, the questions he was asking me, and those questions helped me to do what I did in the internship. And then I met Arun Maira because I was supposed to present my report to Arun, and Arun interviewed me there about my internship. And in that one of the internship subject was how to improve the effectiveness of the full-time apprenticeship program. These were amazing people whom Telco recruited after high school and kept them in an air-conditioned hostel, made them amazing skilled people, including ultimately master craftsmen. But whether it was millwright mechanic or electrician or machinist or tool maker, all this amazing thing. And one of my recommendations to Tata Motors that time was not to recruit TAS officers and MBAs into Telco Pune. I mean, Harpal and Bisti and Rajiv are all here. But the recommendation was that actually make the technical wing of Telco strong, make sure the FTAs go all the way up, the full-time apprentices, make sure graduate engineers were to get all the kind of focus they needed, and that there was no need to hire MBAs and so on. So that recommendation was accepted by Telco Pune at that time. And so here I was after my internship, University of Pune, graduating in my MBA and applying for other positions because I knew Telco Pune would not recruit MBAs. But I and Neera, those days my sweetheart and now my wife for many years, we were in this wonderful place called Vaishali. And incidentally, just a few days back, we had our college reunion, my MBA 50 years reunion and Neera's Ferguson College reunion, 50 years. And in front of Ferguson College hostel, in front of Vaishali, I and Neera took some snaps and we were discussing about how we were sitting early morning in Vaishali when Mahesh and him walked into the restaurant. And Mahesh asked me in his characteristic style, "Anil, what the hell are you doing here?" I said, "What are you doing here?" He used to use this phrase. I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Mahesh, as you can see, this is Neera. I didn't know what to say about that except that she is Neera. And here we are having breakfast." So he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have applied for these jobs. I'm going to go and join most likely this company." So he said, "What the hell are you going to do? Are you going to waste your time in marketing and do all these jobs? You are going to join me to help build one of the world's topmost auto companies, and you are not joining anywhere else." But then I said, "Mahesh, how is that possible? Because you agreed with my recommendation that MBAs ought not to be recruited." He said, "Yes, we have stopped the so-called management training program, but there is something else we have for called postgraduate trainee, which is meant for postgraduate engineers, but there are also a few postgraduates in management that we are inducting." as a postgraduate trainee. So there I was on 21st of May 1975. I went to Telco Pune and he said, go for your medical exam. There was no interview, nothing. He said, of course, we know you who you are. And I went for the medical exam. And next day I joined Telco Pune. And you know, the rest, as they say, is history because I just must thank him that he showed me the way to join a function which very few people used to opt for in the MBA program. And I think he had the foresight to say that managing human resources is going to be critical, that manpower development is going to be the key. And I'm so glad that I trusted his judgment and it gave me my own, the channel to realize my own purpose in life. And so here we are. Mahesh was an exceptional person. In more ways than one, he was very, very special. There are so many things we imbibed from him. Visti Banaji is here. He was a colleague. He was a senior to us, and he was like the two IC to Mahesh in our department. I'm not sure if Arun Myra has joined, but Arun used to be Mahesh's boss, and he was this visionary, sort of very charismatic leader in Telco Pune that we all looked up to. And now here is how life treats you. Arun is my neighbor in the community in which I live, and we are close friends, and he also serves on our advisory board. And life turns one complete circle, as to how there is a higher power that arranges for you to work together. But here are now some specifics that I learned from Mahesh that I want to talk about before I request Rajiv to do the honors by sharing his thoughts. I think number one, what I learned from him is extreme passion for what you do. I think Mahesh was very, very passionate. He really loved what he did. And I think that gave him the courage to do many things. I think he spoke truth to power. And so he just did not hesitate to call it out the way it is, whether it was the CEO of the company, the director of the plant, or anybody in power. I think all his life he spoke truth to power, not worrying about the consequences. Number three, he was extremely caring for people who worked with him. I think he took us in his wings, and he and him, whose wife, who's here also in this call, the environment they co-created for young people, and and for all of us. We used to have this practice once in a month. We had this book club that one of us who would have read a book, we would have a potluck dinner in each other's home, and very often it was in Mahesh's home, Visti's home as well. And we would read out the learning from that book, and then we would all have a potluck together. And I think that was such a wonderful way to inculcate the habit of reading and learning and continuous learning and caring for each other. The other thing that I learned from Mahesh was that never rely only on your memory, because I particularly thought that I had good memory, and if somebody tells me something I will not forget. But Mahesh would say, do not enter my space or office without carrying your diary in which you are going to take notes of our conversation, because unless you have this habit of documentation, you are going to be, sometimes you will forget. And I don't want you to be forgetting what is most important about the conversation that we are having. And lastly, what I always looked at Mahesh was somebody who dreamt in technicolor, somebody who thought and imagined and thought in big, expansive dreams of what was possible. For him, making Telco Pune the best auto company in the world, or the manpower development function, the finest human resources function in the world, or recruiting, as he would say, the best and the brightest, and making sure they stayed with the company. So everything was, there were no second measures there. So I think there were so absolutely wonderful to have a leader like him, and to induct one's professional journey with a leader like him. So it was very special. So I can go on and on, but this is not about me speaking more. So I think what we will now do is I'll request Rajiv to deliver the V.S. Mahesh Memorial Lecture. Rajiv Dubey, my dear friend, who also lives in the same community as I do, also a fellow colleague from the Tata Administrative Services like Visti Harpal Singh, another friend of Mahesh and a colleague from Telco Pune days, and so many others. So Rajiv is, you all know Rajiv. I think he's the only human being I know in my life who stood all India first in his high school. He's got a gold medal in St. Stephen's for bachelor's, Delhi School of Economics gold medalist, and Yale School of MBA gold medalist. So I'm very fond of always talking about Rajiv's accomplishments in that way. But of course, he's done amazing things, and you will experience all his energy in a while. So I don't want to steal the thunder. And Rajiv ji, over to you. And please let us have the joy of listening to you. And we will, I think Rajiv may take maybe 25, 30 minutes to speak. We'll open it up a little for question and answers, and we will close this lecture by all of us sharing our memories of Mahesh as a way of honoring him. So thank you very much. Okay, Rajiv ji, all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Anil ji, and hello to everybody who has joined in. So I am truly privileged, honored, and deeply humbled to have been asked to deliver the ninth V.S. Mahesh Memorial Lecture. Mahesh was 3 years my senior in the TAS, and even though we worked in different businesses of the group, I was mostly in steel, except for a short stint in agrochemicals, and Mahesh was with Telco and Indian Hotels. We frequently interacted with each other. And each of my interactions with Mahesh was marked by warmth, compassion, uh, deep reflection, sharp insight, and lots of learning. In one word, uplifting or inspirational. He was truly a thought leader who cared deeply for people, as Anilji said. Certainly, each time I met him, I felt very cared for. And he envisioned this pioneering future for HR that was, I think, way ahead of its time. So, in all humility, I dedicate this lecture to Mahesh, the man, and his remarkable legacy. And with your permission now, I will use some slides, and I'm now going to share. I hope I can do it. If not, then I will ask Anil ji to come in. Ah, got it. Okay, wonderful. 1 second, please. Wonderful. So I'm calling my presentation Creating Tomorrow's Leaders, the 3+5. Now, this is just to set the context. Now, all of you know that these tectonic shifts are taking place. I think the important point I want to make is that these forces are fundamentally impacting demand and supply of almost everything we can think of, whether it's products and services, the factors of production, especially the kind of human capital that is required, not only the skills, but the mindsets, the attitudes, then the sources of energy, indeed, the very thought paradigms under which organizations and human beings operate. All that is undergoing a churn. So we therefore are being pushed and already are in what is called the new normal, and it is characterized by the words that you see on the screen. I imagine that everybody is familiar with VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and now they have a term BANI. I'm told it stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible, roughly the same thing. But in addition to that, there are two other, I think, big characteristics. One is that there is a pushback now by all the stakeholders involved in the value chain, whether it's our customers, our employees, members of the supply chain, up and down the chain. Shareholders, of course, have always been there. Regulation, the societies or the communities in which we operate. And I think the biggest pushback now is coming from Mother Nature. So there's a pushback, and then there is hyper connectedness. So it is important for me to put this slide because a lot of what I'm going to say actually derives from this slide. So, what does the new normal mean for an organization? And throughout the value chain, there are shifting forces of supply and demand. I already mentioned that, but here they're happening at many points in the value chain. And it requires proactive and iterative decision making at all these points based on a very deep understanding of the stakeholder needs at these various points. And this in turn implies, in my humble opinion, a distributed leadership where you have leaders at various points across the value chain who are empowered and in many ways to be able to take decisions. And it requires at both the individual and the organizational level innovation, agility, and resilience. So, the question that I wish to address in this lecture is how do we create distributed leadership, innovation, agility, and resilience? So, that's the backdrop in which the rest of my presentation will operate. Now, this is again general, but any output or any performance is the result of the interplay or the dance between three major spaces. So, one is the purpose, then there is this whole space called strategy, and then I'm calling it culture. It's all the people issues. And if I may, just for 1 second, and I promise you this is the most complicated slide of all, just to sort of expand on what I mean by strategy and culture. So, very quickly, when I'm talking about strategy, it actually includes all things like vision, mission, structure, systems, processes, and metrics. And when I talk about culture, it's all the human things, the skills, the values, beliefs, attitude, mindsets resulting in some kind of behavior, right? So, in my presentation, I'm not going to really address the strategy part. It's absolutely crucial, critical, necessary, but I can't boil the ocean in 25 minutes. So, I'm going to really be talking about what I think would have been very dear to Mahesh, which is the purpose piece, and most importantly, the human capital or the behavior, the culture piece. So, that's just the context. So, really, for any leader of any corporation or for anyone who's starting anywhere, there are at least these three questions. There are many more questions, but why are we doing? What are we doing? And how should we do it? And lo and behold, really, the answers to all these questions comes from a clear understanding of who are we at the organizational level and at the individual level. Who am I? So that really is the purpose. The who am I? Or, what will the world miss if I'm not there? So I don't want to get into a big thing about purpose. You all know what it is. But I just want to say that this is really crucial. And at least for me, through the ups and downs, the compass or the lighthouse or the guiding force always was ultimately what am I here for, and all the answers to the why, the what, the how, whom, for whom, when, where, all really came from here. And just by way of an example, because every organization and every individual have their own articulation of purpose, the one purpose that I worked with a lot was the Mahindra purpose. And the all our strategic decisions, all our human capital decisions, everything really came from this one sentence, which was that our purpose is to enable people to rise by driving positive change. And we will do that by challenging conventional thinking and innovatively using all our resources, right? So any decision we took came from here. And I'm just saying that purpose is really important. So for tomorrow's leaders and for tomorrow's companies, the starting point has to be the clarity of purpose. And then, of course, the sort of manifestation of that purpose into the strategy piece and into the behavior piece. So this is a general statement. Let me now come into the specifics, which is the heart of my presentation. I said creating tomorrow's leaders, the 3+5. So let me sort of demystify that enigmatic 3+5. So here's the three. These are the three mindsets which I believe tomorrow's leaders must have. The first one says accept no limits. In any person and in any situation, the potential is far, far more than what we think and what we have been told. And the biggest constraint is in the mind, which keeps telling us you can't do this, you can't do that. And we've been brought up like that. Don't do this, don't do that. And therefore, tomorrow's leaders really have to have the ability of going beyond the I can't into an I can kind of a mode. It's about pushing the envelope, it's about stretching where we can go, and so on and so forth. So that's the first mindset. The second mindset is all connected with innovation. It is about thinking differently, jara hatke, alternative thinking. And finally, as you practice accepting no limits, or as you act at accepting no limits, and as you do alternative thinking and implementing it, you have to make sure that you're driving positive change in the lives of the stakeholders and communities that you interact with. So these are the fundamental mindsets or pillars that tomorrow's leaders need to have. Now, these are 30,000 feet words. How do you bring them to life? And I would say, and I'm not getting into the technique. The technical answer is you bring this to life through that interaction between purpose, strategy, and the culture piece, especially the HR levers. And I'll have one slide on that. But I believe that there are five behaviors which, if lived by leaders, would, given the alignment of the HR levers and the strategy, bring these three mindsets or pillars to life seamlessly and effortlessly in any situation where leaders need to act or take decisions or make choices. So, what are those five behaviors? The first one is the ability to use the whole mind, where you combine the so called left brain of intellect, logic, rationality, programming, vital, but not enough in the new normal. You need to combine that left brain with the so called right brain, which is empathy, intuition, connection, innovation, compassion, all the so called soft stuff, which actually I found is much more difficult than the so called hard part. But anyway, the key to the kingdom to come will lie with those leaders and those organizations which seamlessly and effortlessly in any situation are able to combine the left and the right brain and use the whole mind in approaching any situation and articulating what is the real question and in co-creating the answer. So that's the first behavior. The second one is, I'm calling it multiplier, where in the new normal, where the mantra has to be to do more with less. We need multipliers, leaders who are multipliers. Multipliers of what? Of energy, passion, engagement, of creating a sense of ownership. What kind of leaders would be multipliers? So let me start by saying that the opposite of multipliers are the so called diminishers, who are the extreme command and control type. Those leaders who are driven or obsessed with the need to show, I am the best, I have all the answers, you do what I tell you. So, in my opinion, these are the opposite of multipliers, the extreme command and control, and they would be disasters in the new normal. So, then what are multipliers? Multipliers are as smart, they have as much information, as much knowledge, but they do not pretend to have all the answers, and they are not obsessed with the need to show I am the best. They listen, they respect the views of the stakeholders that they interact with. They do not pretend to have all the answers, but focus on identifying the right and the key questions, and then they co create the answers with their cohorts. Far from wanting to show, I am the best, I have all the answers, they get joy in seeing a thousand flowers bloom, with apologies to Chairman Mao Zedong. I come now to the third behavior. This is again connected with innovation. Uh, to innovate, you have to experiment and take risk. When you take risk, almost by definition, there will be failure. But if you don't take risk, you're never going to innovate. So it is a given then that there will be failure. And if you take risk, the biggest constraint in taking risk is fear, the fear of failure. So tomorrow's leaders and tomorrow's organizations somehow have to create a space where people within limits are encouraged to walk away from the well-trodden path to explore. And then what matters is not that we failed, because at least 50% of the time there will be failure, maybe more. But what did we do after we failed? Did we use the learnings from failure to create the stepping stones to success? I believe, and you are experts, but I believe that this is actually the IDEO model of innovation, also, where you try, you fail quick and cheap. There is a feedback loop where you learn and then you try again, and you keep repeating this till you achieve something which is truly path breaking and which you wanted to do. I want your permission for a quick quote on the importance of failure. I presume most of you would have heard of Harry Potter, and the person who wrote the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling, was, I'm told, a fairly complete failure in her personal and in her professional life till the success of Harry Potter. I want to quote a few lines from her 2009 Harvard commencement address, and of course, Visti would know that whole address by heart. So forgive me, Visti, and others who know it, for carrying coal to Newcastle. But here is the quote. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. The knowledge that you will emerge wiser and stronger from setbacks, that you will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift, and even though painfully acquired, it has been worth more to me than any qualification I ever earned. Unquote. I move now to the fourth one, mindfulness. Mr. Dadiwala Dubey is going out of control. Mindfulness. Why don't you retire to a cave in the Himalayas if you're capable of making it there and be as mindful as you want? We are in the world of business and performance, so please don't talk about Buddhist concept like mindfulness. And of course, that would be a good reaction. But when I'm talking of mindfulness here, I'm really talking about being open to all the possibilities that exist in any situation. And from that awareness of possibilities, make a conscious choice whether or not you want to convert any of those possibilities into a reality. It is actually the starting point of innovation, you may say. The problem is that most of us are not really open to the possibilities that exist in any situation, because we are prisoners of our own past, either success or failure. We use a very, very thick filter through which we see reality, and we often miss out on a lot of what is actually there. So, you all know that this business of being present, of being in the here and now, so that we are open to possibilities, is a vital requirement for tomorrow's leaders and for tomorrow's companies, if they are to innovate and if they are to navigate the new normal, which is, just to remind you, VUCA stroke BANI plus pushback plus hyper connectedness. I want your permission from you for one more quote on this whole idea of here and now and being present. Look well to this day, for in its short course lie all the realities and verities of existence, the splendor of action, the glory of achievement, the sorrow of loss and separation, the joy of giving. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Such is my salutation to the dawn. That's Kalidas. I come now to the last, but not the least, perhaps the most important. And if you want to remember one word from this lecture, and that's asking too much, my vote would go to this: trust. So, leaders must have the ability to create an energy, a space, or whatever word you want to create, you want to use, where people trust the leader, and the leader in turn trusts his or her people. So, how do you create this trust? My simple but not simplistic view is that, of course, you need competence, and one would assume that when you, as you climb up, you have competence of some kind. But perhaps more important than competence is credibility or authenticity. What is authenticity? What do I mean by authenticity? Do I say what I think and do I do what I say? So, is my thinking, saying, and doing aligned again and again and again? So, competence, authenticity, and a sense of fairness create trust. And my experience, whatever little I have, has been that no matter how well you do everything else, but if this factor is missing, you can't really do something transformational and something really big on a sustained basis. And so, this is really, in my opinion, among the most important thing that tomorrow's leaders and tomorrow's companies need to have. And this is one thing that seems to be in shortest supply in the new normal. So, if I were to just put it together, what have I said till now? I've said that there are tectonic shifts impacting the forces of supply and demand, and it's creating the new normal, which is VUCA stroke Bani plus pushback plus hyperconnectedness. This creates conditions where throughout the supply chain, there are supply and demand is changing, and it requires proactive and iterative decision making with a deep knowledge of stakeholder needs, and that in turn requires both a distributed leadership plus innovation, agility, and resilience. Then I asked the question, how do you create that? And I said, of course, you need to have the dance between purpose and the strategy piece and the people piece. And I focused on uh, slightly on the purpose and largely on the behavior and mindset piece. And these are the three sort of mindsets and the five behaviors which, taken together, and given that we have aligned the HR levers, would produce what we are looking for in tomorrow's leaders. So let me just move on. Anilji, do I have a few more minutes so that I can go through a few slides?
Yeah, please go ahead. And Mr. Muthuraman, welcome. Thank you for joining the session as well. Thank you. Go
Oh,
ahead, Rajiv ji.
okay. So I just want to say that a lot of our conversation actually focuses around the so-called white-collar workers. You know, people like me who grow beards, sit in air-conditioned rooms, wear ties or polo neck sweaters, and who have no calluses in our hands. And we completely forget that the vast majority of people are not like us. And we need to make sure that we have a work culture which is fair and inclusive, because you cannot be competitive at the organizational level or at the national or a larger level unless, in addition to having the so-called sort of managerial and technical kind of stuff that I talked about, you are also fair and inclusive. And so we need to pay a lot of attention to the so-called blue collar, which now, of course, is not only our own people, but the people who work in the supply chain, the gig workers, the contract workers, the FTAs, all these people who don't have any voice and who we have treated very, very badly. It's time that we wake up, because I think if we don't pay attention to these people, and if you don't engage with them and dialogue and create win-win and make this into a critical business process, I think we are really sitting on a time bomb that will explode. Now, I've been saying this for a long time, and for some strange reason, nothing seems to have improved, and the time bomb hasn't gone off. But I think we are playing with fire and a powder keg if we don't address the fair and inclusive part of operating in a society. And this, of course, must start with our own extended workforce. So, if I were to try and cut through the clutter, What I'm really saying is that the role of tomorrow's leaders is to be clear about their purpose and to achieve it by creating the conditions which unleash the potential of people and the ecosystem. That requires us to provide meaning to our people, to empower them, then to create shared value at the organizational level, and then create the passion in our workforce which unleashes that potential and achieves our purpose. And of course, I had mentioned that the technical part of creating behavior is through the so-called HR levers, which are there. I don't want to. PMS stands for Performance Management System. RNR stands for Reward and Recognition. LND stands for Learning and Development. And then, of course, the oil, the lubricant for it all is communication, and which is a subject by itself. But let me not spend too much time on this particular slide. It's vital though it is. So let me move on to say that even as we talk about these big things, we cannot afford to forget the basics. And I have noticed that in our efforts to do big things, transformational things, we sometimes forget the really basic hygiene stuff. So I think we need to make sure tomorrow's leaders need to make sure that the basics and whatever the basics are, don't want to get into that, they are done brilliantly, not only well, but they're done brilliantly, and enough attention is paid to the basics, and they are not forgotten in our rush to do all the smart, nice, big things that I talked about. And this, of course, because life and the whole environment in which we operate is going to be so complex, we need to keep it simple and stupid. I don't know. Maybe I'll just take a quick story. This is Napoleon Bonaparte. I'm told, and the scholars in the audience can correct me whether I'm wrong, or maybe it's just a story, but it's a nice story. So Napoleon's most important aide in any battlefield was a gentleman called Pierre. Now, there was no telegraph, of course, there was no telephone. So, if you imagine a battlefield, we have Napoleon sitting outside the MBT, the main battle tent, and he has his most important aide, Pierre, with him. And there are generals and brigadiers from different parts of the very extended battlefield who sometimes seek instructions from Napoleon on what they should do on their front. So here comes the dispatch rider from General Lafayette, let's say, and he is caked with mud and he's sweating because he's ridden about 15 miles to get to Napoleon, but he jumps off the horse and stands to attention and salutes Napoleon and hands him over this piece of paper, which contains the questions that Lafayette is asking Napoleon. Lafayette has described his position and is seeking some instructions. So Napoleon looks at that piece of paper, studies it, thinks for a couple of minutes, and then he writes down his instructions. Does he give it to the dispatch rider to take it back to Lafayette? No. He turns to his most important aide, Pierre, gives him that piece of paper. Pierre reads it, and then Napoleon asks him a few questions. And depending on the answers that Pierre gives, Napoleon decides whether or not to send his instructions to the general. Guess who Pierre was? Pierre was the village idiot. He had an IQ of 60. Napoleon used to check whether Pierre had understood his instructions. And if Pierre had, he knew there was a decent chance that the general would also understand, and only then would he send it. So I'm telling you the story because it's a cute story about the importance of keeping it simple. Most of us are so obsessed about showing how smart we are that we make our communication really complex, and the people that we are supposed to communicate with often don't understand it. And I think this is really important both at the organizational and at the individual level in the new normal and for tomorrow's leaders. So let me move on. Very quickly, I think the interaction with the communities, which is what CSR is, needs to be redefined for tomorrow's leaders and tomorrow's companies. Of course, morally and philosophically, it is the right thing to do to give back to the society from which we take everything in due measure. But it also has at least two other, and there should have been a third one, and I'll add it quickly, major sort of business advantages of interacting closely with the community. One is that it gives us access when we are interacting with communities, especially at the bottom of the pyramid. It gives us access to the unmet needs of underserved customers in underpenetrated markets. And from that information that we get, that knowledge that we get, we can create new products, new services, new business models, whole new businesses. So it's a mother font for business innovation. And if our community interaction is not only about giving money, but actually volunteering, then this becomes a crucible experience for leadership development. Because when we interact with community, we have to learn how to influence without authority. And that really is going to be the model for leadership behavior going forward, knowing how to influence without that command and control kind of an authority. And of course, I could have put another bullet or maybe put many bullets, but another one bullet is that you earn the trust of the community that you operate in, then you can operate. I have had so many instances where the communities around our factories blockaded and they were angry, and all operations came to a halt. So you definitely need, and you can call it brand building or whatever you want. That also comes from your CSR. So let me move on. So now, thank God, I'm coming towards the end. If I were to try and put it into a small framework, I would say that tomorrow's leaders are those who are led by purpose and who know how to combine knowledge with execution with purpose or the inner space. I'm calling it knowing, doing, and being. How do you align that? And do it in such a way that it creates passion that unleashes the potential of people and the ecosystem to address the triple bottom line of profit, people, and planet. And for me, I'm sorry, those people who know me must be saying, oh shit, Rajiv is again repeating himself. But I cannot but say that my three best friends in life have been Satya, which is the truth, but said in a respectful manner and not make a virtue out of being rude because I'm telling the truth. Prem, so that's the truth. We must always speak the truth. Anilji mentioned that Mahesh had this amazing ability, which few of us have, to speak truth to power. So it's about truth, definitely to power, but truth elsewhere also. Prem is compassion, the ability to put myself into the shoes of the other person. And I mentioned that one of the key requirements for tomorrow's leaders, right through the value chain, is to have a deep understanding of stakeholder needs. That requires compassion, the ability to put yourself into the shoes of the other person. And Seva, of course, the business is nothing about solving problems. And if we are not able to conduct ourselves in a way that is of service to our stakeholders, then we are violating the basic premise of business or any interaction that involves more than one person. So I want your permission before I close. This is the second last slide. I just want to read out to you from what is called the RISE Manifesto. It's a Mahindra document, not as yet as well known as the Communist Manifestation, but some manifesto, but something which inspired me for many, many years. I had it on my desk. I want your permission to read even as I close. Today is another perfect day to defy the world's naysayers. Today we will think bigger than our size. Today we will refuse to accept limitations. Today we will not be held back by the past. Today we will focus on the future and never ever blink. Today we will break down another barrier, scoff at another convention, and use alternative thinking to solve another previously unsolvable problem. Today we will accomplish something astounding and in the process change someone's life for the better. Today, we will set an example for the world with boldness, with confidence, with relentless optimism. Good morning. Today is another perfect day to rise. And I come now to the most important slide of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me. Now I have to figure out how to get away from this. I think that's it. And now let me further close it. Here we go. Sorry, stop sharing. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much. As always, it was absolutely brilliant. Uh, the floor is now open to a short Q&A session before we share our favorite memories of Mahesh. So, who wants to ask the first question or offer the first comment? I am tempted to, of course, call upon Mr. Muthuraman to say something on this occasion if you feel like, or at whenever, whatever time. I don't want to, say, but okay, Visti, Harpal, anyone else wants to offer any comment? And of course, the audience, you want to ask any question to Rajiv? Yeah, Khurshid, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Rajiv, I just wanted to ask you because I'm interviewing Ravikant on the 9th of January in a fireside chat about his book, Leading from the Back. Have you read it?
No, I'm afraid I didn't even know that he has written this. I'd love to read
Uh,
it.
it yeah, it's worth reading. I can try and get you a copy.
Oh,
He has described leading the future as pretty much lack of a single leader. The triangle toppled over, because his theory is that the younger generation, Gen Z, if you like, don't want to have an authoritarian type leader, and it's going to be the way the world is moving. It's going to be where multiple people call multiple shots, and the whole old concept of leadership is being turned on its head now, and that they don't even want to take instructions. They want to figure things out for themselves. And this is giving way now to a whole new pathway. We have to rethink and recalibrate the way we think about it. And I just wondered what you thought about that.
well, that's exactly what I said. I talked about distributed leadership, which is
Mm.
exactly this. I talked about the multiplier, which is the opposite of the extreme command and control. So I totally agree. And in fact, I mean, I'm sorry, I obviously haven't communicated properly, but that was one of the big themes of my presentation. Thank you for raising it, though. And I would love to read his book. I'll get hold of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incidentally, Rajiv ji has also translated that book into Hindi. So, a few months back when I met him in Mumbai, he gave me both his English and Hindi book.
Oh,
That's right.
acha, acha, I knew him quite well, actually.
Yeah, sure. Questions from the audience? Questions and comments?
Uh,
Yeah,
so,
Harpal, go ahead, Harpal.
so
I'm at it now. Arfan is asking me. Yes, sir.
well, it's difficult to ask when you've got all these very sort of powerful leaders of the HR world in the audience. So, with great humility, if I may say, human endeavor is the consequence of putting together vast numbers of resources to produce whatever is the outcome that your particular endeavor seeks to achieve. And in the business world and in the world of economics and such like, the typical resources are land, capital, and labor traditionally. And my own sort of, and of course, technology these days, which is such an important resource. My sense, which I always have sort of propounded, is that all the others are actually resources. But the fundamental, and that is the source of everything, is HR, is the human side. The human is the source of everything. Everything else is a resource. Your comment.
I agree with you 100%. It is the source, but it obviously needs to work. So I mean, the way I had put it was to show that there is these three spaces. But I totally agree that, so even purpose is a very human thing, right? There is purpose and there is the people thing. I called it the culture, all the human stuff there. Uh, no doubt about it that that's the source. No doubt about it. And then following from that, you have to have structure, strategy, processes, metrics, but they must come from the ultimately the human part, right? Which I'm arguing should also be humane. But couldn't agree more with you, Harpal, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
Anilji, there are various comments I'm unable to sort of read.
yeah, no, the comments are there,
Can I
and
just
they're
say hello? I can see my
no,
dear friend Muthu there. Hi.
yeah, the comments complimenting you on your conversation,
Thank you.
and Dr. Vidya Iyer is reinforcing the concept of KISS, KISS,
Oh, thank you,
which,
sir.
so there he is, there it is. And Dr. Sudhir Gupta, one of our students, who's also an Ayurvedic doctor from Mumbai, he's talking about how he's inspired by what you just said. So there are some comments of that kind. And no questions in the chat box yet. Anyone else wants to ask a question or offer a comment? Okay, in which case, this is my favorite time also of the session for us to recount our own personal memories of Mahesh and something that we would like to say on this beautiful occasion.
I would like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Srinivasan. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an excellent lecture by Rajiv sir
Thank you.
on leadership, how to adapt to the changing world. My question is, there is a constant pressure of performance where leaders are expected to be excellent executors. How can they be excellent executors at the same time be creative and uh, original thinkers?
Yeah. So,
How to balance the two?
yes, right. So, obviously both have to be done. Then it's a question of how you prioritize your time and how much you empower and work with your team. So, if a leader gets too involved in nitty gritties, which others can do as well, if not better, then we have a problem. But definitely both have to be addressed by the leader. It's a question of what you prioritize and where in that spectrum between total empowerment and getting totally involved you need to be on which subject. And I think that is sort of pretty much situational. And actually, that is the real value or the real judgment that leaders have to make. Where in that spectrum between totally empowering and taking total control do I need to be and when? But a leader who does only one part and doesn't address, maybe through empowerment or maybe through the metrics and the structures and processes, then it's not. So both have to be done. It's not a question of either or, but I think probably in terms of prioritization, maybe more time needs to be spent by the leader on the overall purpose and the values of the organization, the overall strategy, creation of the culture, etc., and not get too involved all the time in micromanagement. That is what empowerment is, and that is what I meant by the multiplier not being an extreme command and control type.
Would it, a follow-up question is, would it hold true for all levels of leadership, including the our students who are going to get into soon, probably 2 years, 3 years down the line, into leadership roles from the executive role?
Yeah,
So
I
would it hold true, or the degree of apportionment differs from stage to stage?
I think that's a bit of a philosophical question. My sense is that uh, if a leader has some people report, and I define a leader as anyone who has at least one person reporting to them. So, regardless of where you are in that organizational ladder, you still have to figure out how much to empower, how much to involve, how much to do yourself. So, all these questions, are there even for people at the beginning of their career, although for sure at the beginning of your career, you would be having more of operational stuff which occupies your calendar and your time. And as you move up, it may become less. But I don't know how it will pan out in the new normal where we are talking about, uh, empowering people very early on to have the ability and the freedom and the discretion to make choices, which is what the new normal requires, and which is what I understood Khurshid to be saying is also the thesis of Ravi Khan's book. But I do believe in that, and I think it applies at all levels, but with the differing answers on where you need to be in that spectrum at differing points in time.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you so much,
I
sir.
think Aubrey Rebello wants
Yeah.
to say something. Aubrey is also a PAS, Tata Administrative Service Officer, also a colleague of all of us in Tata Motors or Telco those days. Aubrey, go ahead.
Rajiv, you spoke well. Before I ask my question, I just want to say, Haim, nice to see you after a long time.
Yes.
And
Hi, Aubrey. Thank
Hi.
you.
And with some of them, I've just shared the photo when Mahesh and you came to my house one day before my wedding. I
Yes.
hope you remember that. We were all very young then.
Yes.
Yes.
And that photo has me in a singlet, while all of you are
Yeah.
dressed more appropriately.
Yes.
You were there, him, Mahesh was there, Prakash was there, and Anjali was there.
How
Yeah.
nice.
And hi,
You,
Harpal.
you were
Nithi,
single
Anil.
then, Aubrey, so naturally you wore a singlet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so comfortable with everyone that I could have been even without a singlet, but at least I wore a singlet.
Yeah.
Until the standing committee meeting when some other parts of the clothing were removed.
Acha, I want to ask, since
Yeah,
a
go
lot
ahead,
of
Aubrey.
HR
Go ahead.
leaders are here, and Rajiv, you gave a very insightful talk. One of the things I've always felt is that for a HR leader to succeed and be very good in HR, they should spend a few years in business. What I find a lot of people are in HR from beginning to the end. I mean, they can join in HR, but after 2-3 years, they should spend at least 5 to 6 years in business and then move back to HR. Will make a big, big difference.
No,
Because you can read, think through, all are logical. But the feeling comes when you're actually running a business. All the things that go right or wrong and all the good things you do, the bad things you do, the feel and touch can only come once you are in business. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, I would say, very few people from HR move into business and then go back to HR. I haven't seen many.
in the Aisha group, that was quite common. For instance, at a very young age, I was put in charge of operations of of the plant in Aisha, and we had another colleague in HR moved to head one of our
So I
export.
think you will support my view.
No, I know, and I think it's becoming more common now because people are actually venturing out and people are taking risks and organizations are willing to do that. But thank you, Aubrey, for bringing that out. Naushad wants to say something.
Yes,
Naushad Kurodi.
Before, can I just respond to Aubrey just one bit? I think it's, I totally agree with you, but I think it's also important for people in other functions to spend some time in HR. That will really help.
That's right. Absolutely.
Now, Naushad.
Naushad wants to say something. Naushad Kurodi, dear friend and former also at Tata senior leader. So go ahead, Naushad.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Guru to many of us.
Yes.
Hi, Naushad.
Hi, Naushad.
I, listening to all this, brought back some very essential things to me, which is how do you move from forecast to foresight? Because what you have can be taken from you, but what you have given is always yours. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Naushad. Thank you very much. What a fantastic thought. Yes.
Lovely thought. Thank you, Naushad. Very nice.
Thank you.
Can we?
Who else would like to offer a comment or also talk about the memories with Mahesh?
Can I just make a quick comment on it?
Sure, Harpal.
First of all, I have to say with him here, when and Anil, to your recommendation that telco should not take any TAS officer, I was the sort of on the front line on that particular comment, in the year that I joined the TAS. And to my utter surprise, we were 8 of us. Everybody else was a IITian and an IIM, and I was the only sort of uneducated fellow there. And surprisingly, the only person who joined telco that year was me, which was for the love of me, I couldn't understand why Mahesh, Arun, I think they were the two who sort of engineered it. And to my horror, I was made the executive assistant to Mr. Jagadhar, who, as you know,
That's
was,
right.
was the great technocrat. And, yeah, and having joined him as his EA, I had to catch up with him one day at my request that I wanted to meet him. I said, "Sir, I think you got the wrong guy. And if you got the right guy, you obviously got him in the wrong place, something called the production engineering division, which I couldn't understand head or tail of at the time. But the more important thing is that when I joined Telco Pune, we spent, my wife and I, Sunit, we spent the first 3 weeks with him and Mahesh in their house. They were the most gracious hosts that you can think of. And it made sort of the terror of 6 o'clock morning to 6 o'clock evening, 6 day week, much, much better by the fact that we stayed with them. So him, once again, thank you for that wonderful being the gracious host that you were and friend. And of course, I can't end by making one other comment. If there's any time that when I'm sitting privately and I actually want to induce a giggle within me is to think of Mahesh speaking Hindi to the staff. He was just simply spectacular. It was just simply spectacular. And sometimes when we were together, we traveled up to Simla together to go and see snow together up in the hills. But every time we wanted to sort of get the mood lightened, we would say, Mahesh, say something in Hindi for God's sake. And of course, we were in splits. But those were lovely days. Anyway, that's a little comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other offering of your memories with Mahesh? Okay, and if any of you, including him, you want to say anything by way of closing this conversation, happy to do that. But okay.
But there's him. Come on now. We haven't had you. We want to hear you.
Him. We want to hear your voice.
Well, Anil, you know me, rather than dipping into my memories or archive of memories, I'm going to just add this to that, this wonderful evening. And I am pretty convinced Mahi would have been delighted, not only with Anil's heartwarming introduction, as always, and seeing all his old friends, but also the evening's presentation, well, for its content, its form, its reach, its depth, and the man behind it, Rajiv, for his erudition and empathy, all that. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So with this, and Mr. Muthuraman, I keep getting tempted to say, I like to hear your voice as well. I don't know if you wish to say something. Yes. Okay. Okay. That's fine. I think, as all of you know, Mr. Muthuraman is also one of those very, very inspiring leaders, not just because of what he says, but what he did actually. I had the joy of working with him, experiencing the power of the kind of leadership that he brings to almost every sphere of his life. So Rajiv ji, your conversation about what you were presenting, if I may say, you have worked also closely with Mr. Muthuraman, and I know
Yes,
you
yes.
refer to him as Muthu.
Oh, so I
So,
have such fond memories of Mr. Muthuraman.
yeah, my friend.
From the time I joined as a TAS probationer, if I remember, I think he was still in the blast furnaces at that time.
That's right.
After that, when I was in the marketing division and he was, I think, looking after special steels, we used to go on the motorcycle to the stockyard. We played cricket together. Where Muthu, of course, was a great cricket player. I remember one very memorable match we played Tata Steel Delhi region versus St. Columba's High School, where Muthu Raman had the nail of his thumb knocked out on the second ball. And with that bleeding hand, he went on to score an unbeaten 63 or something like that. And then he was also my neighbor for I had the honor and privilege of being his neighbor in Jamshedpur in Nildi for a short while. There was just a wall that separated my humble abode from his palatial mansion. I have
Yeah,
very fond
yeah, no, and I think
memories.
it's
Wonderful
yeah,
person.
and Mahesh, as you all know, was also extraordinarily fond of cricket, like Mr. Muthuraman, and I think we shared our passion for cricket together, and so there are some wonderful qualities, and I think so it's something very, very nice to see that. So. With these words, I just want to thank each one of you for co-creating this wonderful evening, and thank you very much. I think we decided to do it on his birthday this year so as to honor, that spirit. And also we couldn't do it in person because of the extreme pollution in Gurgaon, and I think it's not a good idea to get people to come to campus on this evening. But I hope that in the future we'll also be able to do that in person. So I look forward to continuing the conversation because Mahesh's memorial lecture is another way for us to bring out the best in us and to bring hope. And if there is only one thing, I want to leave you all with the thoughts that Mahesh always talked about the power of the inner journey. And I think after all is said and done, is the inner witness that we invoke in our lives and which gives us that understanding who we really are and then empowers everything else that we do. So thank you very much. And, thank you for being part of this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.